When preparing for the wedding, I accidentally overheard my fiancé saying to his childhood friend, after meeting her, I realized that the past 7 years with Yuki were just making do. His childhood friend comforted him, Yuki is suitable for marriage. Just make do with it. Later, I canceled the wedding. Before it was me who was eager to get married, but now it was him who was desperate to get married. But Caleb, just the thought of spending my whole life making do with you makes me feel so disgusted. After the engagement banquet, Caleb wanted to treat his brothers to a meal alone. After dropping him off downstairs at the restaurant, I found that he had forgotten to take the wine in the trunk of the car, so I parked the car properly and deliberately took the wine up for him. Unexpectedly, I happened to hear him talking to his good brothers. After meeting her, I realized that the past 7 years with Yuki were just making do. His brothers comforted him, but Yuki is the one suitable for marriage. Just make do with it. I clenched my fingernails tightly on the box containing the wine so that I didn't burst into tears in the corridor where people were coming and going. Hearing the sound of chairs being dragged, it seemed that someone was standing up and about to walk out of the door. I hurriedly hid in the empty private room next door. My mobile phone vibrated. It was a call from Caleb. When I answered it, I realized how strange my voice was, but he didn't notice it. Or maybe he pretended not to notice. Baby, have you driven far? I forgot to take the wine in the trunk. Could you come back and bring it for me? Okay. Thank you, baby. Love you. After hanging up the phone, I smiled with a bit of disgust. How disgusting this person is. Clearly not loving me, yet still calling me baby and saying he loves me. I handed the wine to the front desk and asked them to help deliver it. As soon as I got back in the car, I felt like I was released and lay on the steering wheel, crying loudly. After crying, I became extraordinarily calm again, as if I had already expected what happened today in my heart. It's just that now the Pandora's box that I didn't dare to open has been opened. I had suspected it before, but I never found any evidence and thought it was just my lack of security playing tricks on me. Looking back now, it was just that I didn't want to admit the reality, admit that the man who had been in love with me for 7 years no longer loved me. It's said that women's sixth sense is very accurate. I don't know when it started, but I felt that Caleb was hiding something from me. Several times after he got home, he would sit in the car for a long time. Once, I happened to go downstairs to throw out the trash and found him sitting in the car. The light from his mobile phone screen shone on his face, and his smile was very obvious. After I walked closer, he got out of the car without hiding his smile at all and hugged me in his arms. What were you looking at? You're smiling like that. He unlocked his phone, and a funny short video shared by his childhood friend Luchin popped up. It was so seamless. How could I suspect him? Another time, I found that in his shopping app, the number of Valentine's Day gifts for me was 2 when he placed the order. I asked him, and he said I spent a long time choosing the gift and accidentally added one more. When I received it and found there was one more, I returned it. Seeing my suspicious look, he took the phone and showed me the refund record. There was indeed a refund record. I should have believed him, but he was the kind of person who would carefully check the orders even when paying the bill after eating out. For something worth thousands of yuan, how could he not notice that he paid twice the price? Thinking about it carefully, there were too many suspicious points. But Caleb was cautious, and I just couldn't catch any clues. After several times like this, my suspicion made me lose my sense of security. I naively thought that everything would be okay after getting married. After all, I had been with him for 7 years. I didn't want my suspicion and speculation to push him further and further away from me. But when I tentatively proposed getting married for the first time, Caleb's hesitation made me even more worried about gains and losses. He always had various excuses to explain, and I was also confused by his logic, as if my proposal was so excessive. Gradually, getting married seemed to become my obsession. Because of this, we had quarreled twice. Later, when having dinner with Caleb's parents, Caleb's mother asked me if I had any plans to get married. I nodded and said that I was considering it. After that night, Caleb gave me the silent treatment because I knew that his mother was pressing hard for us to get married, and I actually agreed. In this way, Caleb's mother would put pressure on Caleb to finalize the wedding as soon as possible. I really cared too much about Caleb because this man had really given me a lot of warmth in the past. In high school, I encountered campus bullying on the playground. My white school uniform was soaked through and clung tightly to my body. And everyone gathered around and jeered. It was he who walked out of the crowd, put his coat on me, and said to me, "I'll help you ask the teacher for leave. Hurry back to the dormitory and change your clothes. Be careful not to catch a cold." After that incident, we didn't have much interaction. Caleb and I didn't go to the same university, but we actually worked part-time in the same fast food restaurant. I even thought that we were meant to be destined to meet each one another. Once, when I was delivering food, I was harassed by a customer, and I was too cowardly to say anything. It was Caleb who came to help me again. Because of this, he was fired by the restaurant owner. And also because of this incident, I was sure that I liked Caleb. My secret love for Caleb lasted until I graduated from university. I was afraid that I would never have another chance to say it out loud, so I wanted to summon up the courage to confess my love to him. Unexpectedly, he took the lead and said the 4 words, "I like you," before I did. At that moment, even though I had never won the lottery or got a buy one, get one free when buying drinks, I still felt that I was such a lucky person. Because the person I liked also liked me. After being with Caleb, all our friends around us said that he was good to me. He was considerate, unique, and deeply affectionate. So when I thought I was going to lose this kindness, I panicked and tried to use marriage to tie this man down. I still remember on Christmas Eve, Caleb came home looking lost. I thought he had encountered setbacks at work and went up to gently hug him. It was also on that day that Caleb said that he had made up his mind and wanted to marry me. Thinking about it now, it should be that Caleb knew it was impossible with the her he mentioned, and that's why he said he wanted to marry me, right? So it turns out that I was the backup option, the person to make do with and spend a lifetime reluctantly. After getting home, I looked at the wedding plan laid out on the coffee table. I had sorted it out with anticipation before. But now, I calmly notified the wedding planning company and the hotel and the group that the wedding was canceled. Caleb wasn't in the group. He thought there were too many things to confirm all day long, so he left all the matters to me, who was happy to handle them. And he, finding it annoying, left the group. I smiled bitterly. If I didn't say anything, he probably wouldn't know that the wedding had been canceled until the wedding day. As if saying goodbye, I walked around the small house where we had lived for less than 2 years, running my hands over every object that we had placed with our own hands. Although I didn't know who the her was or when Caleb fell in love with her, but at least when we moved in and decorated our new home. Caleb should have also decorated it while imagining our future, right? My fingertip accidentally hooked a photo frame on the shelf and the photo frame fell to the ground, shattering into pieces instantly. That was the first photo of us together. In the photo, I had a big smile on my face, and Caleb was looking at the camera with affectionate eyes. I was almost about to start reminiscing about that day years ago when I found that there was a corner of another photo exposed under that photo. I squatted down, pushed aside the glass shards on the surface, and picked up the photo with a corner exposed. The moment I saw that photo, my blood froze and I directly fell to the ground. My palm also pressed on the shards, and soon blood seeped out. In the photo, Caleb was on the basketball court, and a girl was sitting on the steps not far behind him. From his blushing and shy smile, it wasn't hard to see how shy he was, even though it was just a misaligned photo with that girl. And that girl, how could I not recognize her? She was Vivian, a famous figure in our high school. On the first day of the first year of high school, her photos were widely spread on the school's post bar, and she was praised as the school beauty. Moreover, she came from a good family, was excellent in academics, had many talents, and was good-looking. She was just like a perfect heroine in a novel, but she transferred to another school in the first semester of the second year of high school. The reason why I was bullied in high school was that I looked similar to Vivian. After she transferred away, several girls who had been jealous of Vivian took it out on me. I didn't have Vivian's good luck. I was just an ordinary student who was extremely introverted and low-key, and my academic performance was just so-so. Even our head teacher once said, "Why do you have a face that looks so much like that top student, but your grades don't match at all?" So when I was bullied, I didn't even have the courage to tell the teacher and didn't want to worry my parents, so I could only endure it silently. But later, in my memories, this incident also became a small part of my luck. Because if it weren't for this incident, Caleb wouldn't have helped me out on the playground, and I and Caleb wouldn't have had our first interaction. But now I looked at the photo in my hand, and big tears dropped on it, smudging the ink of the photo. It turns out that Caleb liked Vivian. He probably helped me on the playground because he couldn't bear to see a face similar to Vivian being bullied. He hid the photo of him and Vivian in the photo frame of our photo behind our photo. Could it be that in these 7 years, he had always regarded me as a substitute? A substitute for Vivian? After discovering this little secret, I was shocked to realize that Vivian's shadow had been present in many trivial things in the past. For example, every bouquet of flowers and bracelet that Caleb gave me contained elements of the love P. Even the themes of the decoration for our engagement banquet and wedding were related to the love P. I had even asked him why there were always love P's in the flowers he gave me since we weren't in a long-distance relationship. At that time, Caleb said, "Because even if we're separated for just half a day, I'll miss you terribly." Now I know that the reason Caleb liked to give me love P's was probably just because Vivian once sang a song called Red Bean at the school anniversary show. Moreover, I heard that before Vivian transferred schools, she gave each classmate in the class a love P. So it turns out that the person he had been missing was never me, but Vivian. Another example is that he said he liked to see me with long hair and liked to see me wearing simple and elegant dresses. One year, it was so hot that I cut my hair to shoulder length and changed into a set of clothes that were fresher and more suitable for commuting to work. When I first tried to change my look, my colleagues and friends all said that I looked so much better. So, in order to give Caleb a surprise, I deliberately went to wait for him outside his company after work. However, when he saw me, his first reaction was to pull me aside to avoid his colleagues who were coming out with him. Then he looked me up and down. Although he said in a joking way that I looked like a tomboy and seemed 10 years older, I could clearly see his truly disgusted actions and expressions. But my colleagues and friends all said that I'm more suitable for short hair. Those are all outsiders. They were just being polite to you. Do you really take it seriously? Only those who are truly close to you and have your best interests at heart will tell you the truth. Therefore, during that period of time, I was extremely anxious about my appearance. I kept eating foods and so-called health products that were supposed to help hair grow faster. From time to time, I even thought about pulling my hair to make it grow faster. It turns out that it wasn't that I was ugly. It was just that I had ruined the image of Vivian in his mind. Another example is the string of numbers on the inside of the wedding ring. I took off the ring. Because I used too much force, a scratch with blood appeared on my knuckle. 5/20/1224, December 24th, Christmas Eve, was also the day when Caleb finally agreed to marry me. At first, I didn't understand. Generally speaking, people would engrave the other person's birthday at this time. It was Caleb who said, "I think the day when we made up our minds and promised to spend our lives together is more worthy of our commemoration." I was so silly that I didn't have any doubts and believed him again. However, if I remember correctly, Vivian's birthday is also December 24th because on Christmas Eve in the first year of high school, the sound of Happy Birthday song faintly came from the next class during the evening self-study. Later, I learned that it was for Vivian's birthday. Haha, I had been with Caleb for 7 years. If we count from the day when he helped me out on the playground, it had been a full 13 years. It turns out that during these 13 years, he had always regarded me as another person. The person he loved wasn't me, but the shadow of another person that he saw in me. I cleaned up the fragments on the floor and took care of the wound on my hand. While packing my luggage, I waited for Caleb to come back. Although I really wanted to take revenge on him and wanted to make him look bad at the upcoming wedding, it would be best if he could directly tell everyone in public what a fickle person he was. However, I couldn't do that. No matter what kind of person Caleb was, his mother had truly been nice to me. After knowing that my family's financial situation wasn't good, she not only didn't stop me from dating Caleb, but even lent me money without hesitation when my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer with bone metastasis and urgently needed money for treatment and would still need a lot of money for future treatments. And Vivian, among Caleb's good buddies, there were also his high school classmates. Since they all knew that the person in Caleb's heart was Vivian, maybe others knew it too. If I did that, I might involve Vivian as well. How innocent she was. So, I thought it would be better to tell Caleb face to face about canceling the engagement. Parting on good terms was the last bit of dignity I left for him. The doorbell rang. Caleb was carried back by his two buddies, Cooper and Malachi. Cooper smiled sheepishly and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. We accidentally made Caleb drink too much while carrying Caleb into the house." Cooper turned around and asked me, "Sister-in-law, where should we put Caleb? On the sofa or on the bed?" I raised my hand and fanned the smell of alcohol in front of my nose in disgust. I frowned and went to open the balcony door wider to let in some fresh air while answering, "Whatever. You can even throw him on the floor. After all, if he vomited on the sofa or the bed, it would be hard to clean up." Whatever. On the floor." Cooper and Malachi looked at each other and finally chose to throw Caleb onto the sofa. Probably thinking that I was angry before leaving, they didn't forget to explain for Caleb. "Sister-in-law, don't be angry. The brothers haven't gathered so completely for a long time. We were just so happy that we drank a bit too much. On the day of your wedding, we'll definitely help Caleb block the wine." I looked at the wedding planning case that I had just thrown into the trash can. "Caleb and I haven't gotten married yet. Don't call me sister-in-law for now. It's getting late. You should go back early too." I walked to the entrance first, opened the door, and took on a posture of seeing them off. Cooper and Malachi felt a bit embarrassed and quickly left while apologizing. I looked at their leaving backs with disgust. It was these people who clearly knew that there was someone else in Caleb's heart but had been helping him cover it up so seamlessly all along. When I thought of how Caleb's brothers said at the engagement banquet how much Caleb loved me, I had been overjoyed at that time. Now it seems that they probably thought I was stupid and were just laughing at me. Caleb was so drunk that he kept murmuring my name and saying that he loved me. It's so disgusting, really disgusting. It seems that after regarding me as another person for a long time, he really took me for her. Seeing how drunk he was, I knew that there was no chance to make it clear to him tonight. So, I directly went into the room, pushed out the packed suitcase, left the wedding ring on the coffee table, and left. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning when I got back to my parents' house. But as soon as I entered the door, I saw my mother still sitting on the sofa, making handmade souvenirs under the warm yellow light. When she saw me come back, she was startled for a moment and accidentally pricked her index finger with the embroidery needle. I quickly stepped forward, took 2 tissues, and pressed them on my mother's bleeding index finger. Then I saw the material packages all over the coffee table and a small basket of finished products beside it. Those were commemorative dolls of Yinqing. In the past, when our family was in a difficult situation, my mother would make these handmade dolls and set up a stall outside the ancient town of Yinqing to sell them. "Mom, you're not in good health. Why are you still staying up late to make these? Where's Dad? Why didn't Dad stop you?" I nagged at her while tidying up the things on the coffee table. Your dad is asleep." I couldn't fall asleep, so I found something to do. My mother's eyes fell on the suitcase behind me. Her face, which had just had a bit of a smile, immediately became worried. Did you quarrel with Caleb?" Actually, my parents were very satisfied with Caleb, especially after knowing about his part-time jobs in high school and college. They joked more than once that I was really lucky to marry Caleb. Maybe it was a blessing I had earned in my past life. Especially after my mother got sick, Caleb's mother lent our family a large sum of medical expenses without hesitation. My parents even thought that I had really found a good family. At this moment, looking at my mother's worried eyes, the words I had thought of on the way seemed stuck in my throat. How should I tell them that the good son-in-law they thought was not a good son-in-law, a good man, or a good husband at all? And how should I tell them that their beloved daughter had been regarded as a substitute for someone else for a full 13 years? Just as I was about to speak, there was the sound of the door opening at the entrance again. I turned around to look and saw my father, who should have been sleeping in the room, wearing a frog doll costume, holding the headgear in one hand and a string of frog balloons in the other hand. The ancient town was so lively today. I sold 30 balloons tonight. After changing his shoes and turning around, my father's smile froze on his face the moment he saw me. He felt a bit embarrassed and hid the headgear behind him. Yuki is back. My father hurriedly took off the doll costume. However, the white t-shirt inside was already soaked through and clung tightly to his body. How hot it was in Yunqing. The apparent temperature during the day was nearly 40 degrees Celsius, and it was even more humid and stuffy at night. And my father had actually stayed in this thick doll costume for the whole night. Dad, Yuki, don't be angry. Mom's illness costs so much money that our family can't even afford a decent dowry for you. So Mom can only do some handicrafts to help with the family expenses. Caleb's mom has already helped our family so much. Mom doesn't want you to be looked down upon after you marry into their family. Mom's cautious appearance as she explained made the words I had been carefully considering on the way even harder to say, for I was afraid that she couldn't accept it for a while. Mom, Caleb's mom won't look down on me. You know that. Auntie likes me very much. Yes, Mom knows. Thinking of this, the glistening tears in Mom's eyes showed a hint of relief again. She lovingly tidied up the loose hair beside my ear. Dad, who had changed into dry clothes, came out with a red box wrapped in cloth in his hand. He handed it to me as if showing off a treasure and opened it. Look, dragon and phoenix bracelets. We've added another dowry item for you. How nice. My eyes couldn't help getting hot and tears welled up in them, but to avoid my parents' misunderstanding, I pretended to be coquettish and gently pushed it away. What's so nice about it? Mom's still ill and needs money. Why did you buy this? One thing at a time. Your mom's illness has to be treated, the money borrowed from Caleb's mom has to be repaid, and your dowry also has to be added. You're our only daughter. No matter how poor we are, we'll make sure you have a grand wedding. Dad carefully closed the lid of the jewelry box and wrapped it up carefully with the cloth again. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes became deeper because of his smile. At this time, Mom suddenly remembered the important matter. She pulled my hand with a worried look on her face and asked, "Why did you come back by yourself in the middle of the night and with a suitcase? Did you quarrel with Caleb?" I wiped away my tears and still told a lie.
No.
Don't I need to come back and live for a week before the wedding? I just brought back some clothes that I don't wear often. Tonight, Caleb is having a party with his buddies. I was bored at home, so I suddenly wanted to come back. The distance between my parents' home and Caleb's home is less than an hour's drive. I usually come back without notice sometimes, so my parents really didn't suspect anything. Mom breathed a sigh of relief when she heard what I said. Next time, even if you want to come back, don't be so late. It's too dangerous. As soon as Mom started to lecture me, I snuggled into her arms and acted coquettishly. I know, Mom laughed and said that I was still the same as when I was a child. She stroked my back again and again. The scene of our family of 3 looked even warmer under the warm yellow light. After a while, I still couldn't help but test the waters and asked Mom, "Dad, do you really like Caleb that much? What if I don't marry him?" After I asked this question, Mom's hand on my back stopped. I suddenly felt a bit nervous and was just about to say that I was just joking. Dad said, "Seriously, if you haven't married yet and don't want to marry him, Mom and Dad will definitely support you. But if you've already married and then say you regret it and want a divorce, then Dad won't be nice to you." After hearing Dad's words, I was stunned for a moment, and then my heart started to feel sour and swollen again. Tears were almost about to burst out of my eyes. "Yuki, why did you suddenly ask this question? Didn't you always want to marry Caleb?" I was just making an assumption. With Dad's words, I instantly became more determined. I shouldn't continue walking on the wrong path just because I'm afraid that my parents will worry, because that will make them worry about me even more in the future. But I still decided not to tell them for now. I'll tell them after everything is settled. By the way, Lao's song, didn't we say that we would put all the betrothal gifts from Caleb's family into the dowry and let Yuki take them back? I wanted to go to the bank to deposit the money today, but it's the weekend and the bank isn't open. I heard that we need to make an appointment now. It's so troublesome. Go and take out the money. Then Mom lowered her head and said to me, You can go and deposit the money into the card when you're free tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll be very inconvenient to carry so much cash at that time." Dad immediately got up and went into the room. He came out with a box of money and handed it to me. I couldn't help getting red-eyed again. I knew that Mom and Dad didn't really want me to go and deposit the money, but let me decide where the betrothal gifts would go. Keep it and marry Caleb. Return it and call off the engagement. With my parents' support, I slept particularly soundly that night. Early the next morning, I received a WeChat message from Caleb. "Sorry, baby, I drank too much last night. Are you angry? Baby, where are you? Why did you leave the wedding ring behind? Don't you care about me anymore? Yuki, no matter what, don't keep talking about breaking up. Didn't you say that? I haven't had a get-together with my buddies for a long time. You knew I would drink last night. What are you making a fuss about now? Call me back. Right now." Immediately. Looking at the glaring words like baby and darling that Caleb sent, I, who hadn't eaten anything last night, even felt like vomiting. It wasn't until I saw that he started to get angry out of embarrassment that I gradually felt better. Yeah, this was his true face. I replied to Caleb and made an appointment to meet him at the coffee shop downstairs from his company at noon. Just after I sent the message, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end of the phone was very nice, soft and gentle, just as nice as her singing voice. Yes, it was Vivian on the other end of the phone. She asked to meet me, thinking that it would be almost time to meet Caleb after meeting her. So I also arranged to meet Vivian at the coffee shop downstairs from Caleb's company. Once, I had no direct relationship with Vivian. Now, because of Caleb, we were reluctantly connected. Since I didn't know the specific reason why Vivian asked to meet me, I imagined all kinds of scenarios on the way there. I arrived 10 minutes early, but I didn't expect that Vivian was already there when I got to the coffee shop. She was still as elegant, beautiful, and charming as she was in high school. When she saw me coming in, Vivian immediately stood up from her seat and smiled and waved at me. I secretly cheered myself up and walked towards her with my head held high and greeted her in an affected manner. But after I sat down, Vivian took a sip of the coffee in her cup rather unnaturally. She looked as if she was nervous. So I asked first, "I don't know why you asked to meet me today. What's the matter?" Vivian put down the cup in her hand and gently wiped the corner of her mouth with a tissue. Then, as if she had finally gathered her courage, she slowly began to speak. "I saw the news of Caleb's and your engagement in a classmate's WeChat moments. Actually, everyone told me not to get involved in this matter. But maybe I'm just a busybody, so I managed to get in touch with you." I nodded to show that I understood and didn't say anything, waiting for her to continue. Actually, Caleb and I were classmates in the first year of high school. Later, I transferred to another school. Then I went abroad to study and came back to work. By accident, I had a work relationship with Caleb again. Vivian carefully looked up at me and continued. He started to pursue me. Because our law firm had to work with Caleb for a while at that time, I was afraid of awkwardness and didn't clearly reject him. Until a little over 2 months ago, I accidentally found out that he already had a girlfriend who he had been dating for many years. I immediately and clearly rejected him and told him not to harass me anymore. I didn't even take the gifts he gave me. As if she was afraid that I might misunderstand, Vivian waved her hands nervously. I suddenly remembered the Valentine's Day gift that Caleb ordered 2 copies of, but returned one. At this time, I finally understood the purpose of Vivian's visit to me. My shoulders relaxed a bit, and I didn't maintain the defensive state as before. Vivian saw my eyes quickly turn red and immediately took out a tissue and handed it to me. I took it and smiled gratefully. "Well, I didn't come to see you today to sow discord or anything. I just think that you shouldn't be deceived by a scumbag and marry him. Vivian was waving her hands in a flustered manner and explaining in a jumbled way, which made me want to laugh. I know I looked at Vivian's face, which was somewhat similar to mine because of her anxiety and nervousness. Her face was a bit flushed. Remembering that on the way here I had still imagined her as someone who would force me to let go of Caleb, I suddenly felt very guilty. I sighed deeply and said to Vivian, "Actually, Caleb has liked you for a long time, since the first year of high school. Even the reason why he was with me was just that I looked like you. And I only found out about this yesterday. Vivian probably only knew that Caleb was too timing and didn't know that he had even regarded me as a substitute. Her beautiful eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she was very angry. What? Then, do you still plan to marry him? I shook my head. No, I made an appointment to meet him in a while to talk about breaking off the engagement. After meeting Vivian, I waited in the coffee shop for a while and then saw Caleb coming here in a hurry. He was in a bad state after a hangover. As soon as he sat down, he tugged at his thigh and started to complain. You knew I drank too much, yet you just left me sleeping on the sofa all night. You didn't even make me some hangover soup, which made my head ache terribly when I got up today. In the past, I would definitely have said sorry repeatedly and reflected on myself when faced with his complaints. But today, from the moment he sat down, I folded my arms across my chest and looked at him indifferently. It was also the first time that I realized that the person I used to like was actually such a jerk. Seeing that I didn't say a word and looked cold, Caleb took out the wedding ring impatiently and put it in front of me. If you throw the ring around casually again, I'll really be angry. I won't hold it against you this time. I lowered my eyes to look at the ring and asked, what does 520-1224 mean? Caleb probably didn't expect that I would suddenly ask this question. He was a bit surprised, but he quickly explained. Didn't I say it before? It's the day we decided to get married. I sneered and took out the photo from my bag. I slapped it heavily on the table and pushed it in front of him. The moment Caleb saw the photo, he froze. It took him a long time to raise his head to look at me. Where did you get this? Where did I get it? I asked with a smile. You put this photo on the shelf facing the bed in our bedroom. Where do you think I got it from? Of course, you put it right in front of me, Caleb. December 24th, Christmas Eve, is also Vivian's birthday, right, Caleb? Faced with my questioning, Caleb was speechless. He immediately tore the photo to pieces. No, December 24th is the anniversary of our decision to get married. No. I shook my head and gave Caleb a sarcastic smile. December 24th is Vivian's birthday, and it's also the day when she formally rejected you and told you to stop pestering her. Hearing what I said, Caleb was a bit surprised. It seemed that he was astonished that I knew about this. Even so, he still lied and habitually accused me. Yuki, what nonsense are you talking about? I haven't seen Vivian for a long time. If you want to break up, just say it directly. Don't make up things to frame me. Has someone told you something? He reached out to hold my hand. Disgusted, I shook it off and suddenly stood up. The noise of the chair falling backward attracted the attention of many people in the restaurant. This coffee shop also served simple meals, so there were quite a few people who worked in this building coming down for lunch. Among them were Caleb's colleagues, thinking that it was inconvenient to carry a box of cash. I went to the bank before coming to the coffee shop and deposited the betrothal gifts into my bank card. Now, I threw the bank card with the betrothal gifts in front of Caleb. Here is the betrothal gift from your family. I'm giving it back to you. Caleb, I want to break off our engagement. After saying that, I turned to leave, but Caleb grabbed me. Yuki, do you know what you're talking about? You were the one who was eager to get married before. Now that the wedding is about to happen, you're doing this? Don't listen to other people's nonsense. I tried hard to break free, but Caleb was using too much force. Not only could I not break free, but my wrist also hurt so much that it felt numb. At this moment, a hand in a black suit stretched out from behind me, and a chop with the hand landed on Caleb's wrist. He immediately let go because of the pain, and I was finally free. I turned around and saw that Vivian, who had just left, had come back. She pulled me behind the man she brought with her and shouted at Caleb. I told her, whether I'm talking nonsense or whether you're a scumbag, Caleb, you know it in your heart. Caleb didn't expect Vivian to show up here. He immediately understood what was going on, but his first reaction was still not to admit his mistake, but to slander instead. He pointed at Vivian. Yuki. She was the one who pestered me before. Don't be deceived by her. Vivian, who was being smeared, was so angry that she stomped her feet. She was about to open her mouth to refute when the tall man she brought with her seemed to hear something funny. Just you? Are you worthy of my girlfriend pestering you? Just because of your slander just now, You will definitely receive a lawyer's letter from me within 3 days. Vivian shyly and proudly whispered in my ear, "This is my boyfriend." Just when we were about to leave, he learned that you were going to confront the scumbag and was afraid that you might be in danger, so he brought me back here. I gratefully held her hand back, and my voice choked up again. "Thank you, Vivian." After being recognized by his colleagues and boss in the coffee shop, Caleb fled in a hurry. Vivian and her boyfriend Ethan also took me and drove me home. On the way, I received a message from Caleb. "Yuki, let's have a good talk. There's a misunderstanding in this matter. Listen to my explanation carefully. Yuki, it's okay if you want to break up and break off our engagement, but immediately return the 150,000 yuan that my mother lent to your mother for medical treatment. Otherwise, you must marry me. Do you think with your and your family's conditions, you can find someone better than me? What right do you have to tell me to break off our engagement? Where are you? If you don't reply to my message, I'll go directly to your parents and say that your family is cheating in the marriage." Since my phone kept ringing when I opened it, Vivian leaned over to take a look. After reading the messages, she was so angry that she almost jumped up in the car. "Ethan, that scumbag is actually threatening her to marry him." Ethan happened to stop the car to wait for the traffic light and took a glance at the phone. "Yuki, our law firm ranks first in Yunqing and second to none. If you need legal assistance, we are willing to provide you with free services." Hearing Ethan's overbearing yet charming words, Vivian's face blushed instantly. Suddenly, I felt that meeting such a lovely couple because of Caleb was the only good thing about him. "Thank you first. If I need it, I will definitely ask you for help." I turned off the screen of my phone, thought for a few seconds, and then said, "Ethan, could you please turn around and go to Songjing Community?" Without hesitation, Ethan readily turned around and drove me to Songjing Community. After learning that this was Caleb's mother's home, Vivian was a bit worried again. "Don't worry. Caleb's mother is very nice. Well, I'll send you a message when I come out in a while." For my sudden visit, Caleb's mother was a bit surprised and quickly welcomed me in. At present, she didn't know what had happened between me and Caleb and really regarded me as her daughter-in-law who was about to marry into the family. Auntie was very skillful with her hands. She even cut the paper cut of the Chinese character, sure, double happiness, for the wedding by herself. The tools for paper cutting were placed on the table. Seeing Auntie preparing these things wholeheartedly, my nose couldn't help getting sour again. It's a pity that I didn't have the fate to be her daughter-in-law. I choked and said, "Annie, I came here today because I have something to tell you." Hearing my trembling voice, Annie turned around and saw my red eyes. She immediately put down the things in her hands and pulled me to sit down. "What's the matter? Did Caleb bully you? That boy. He's already disobedient just after getting engaged. I'll call him back and scold him right away." After saying that, Annie took out her phone to make a call, but I pressed it down. Just now, Caleb left in such a hurry that he didn't take the bank card with the betrothal gifts. So I took out that card again and handed it back to Annie with both hands. "What's this?" "Auntie, this is the betrothal gift for our family. I want to break off my engagement with Caleb. I came here today to return the betrothal gift to you. Besides the betrothal gift, there is also 50,000 yuan in it, which was the money for the engagement banquet. And the 150,000 yuan that you lent to our family, I will definitely return it to you as soon as possible." Hearing that I wanted to break off the engagement, Andy quickly realized that the matter between me and Caleb was definitely not as simple as just a quarrel. "Yuki, what exactly happened? Tell me if that boy Caleb has wronged you. Andy will definitely break his legs and make him kneel in front of you to admit his mistakes. Please don't break off the engagement, okay? Actually, when I thought that I could marry Caleb before, I really felt very lucky. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship that others were afraid of wouldn't happen with Caleb's mother. Moreover, she had always taken good care of me. Thinking of this, I was also reluctant to part with her. I told Andy the whole story in detail. From the moment she heard Caleb's words that the past 7 years with me were just making do, Andy's eyes were full of disbelief. Yes, if I hadn't heard it with my own ears and seen it with my own eyes today, I wouldn't have thought that Caleb was such a good actor. I took out the photo that Caleb had torn up. There weren't many pieces, and it could be restored with just a little piecing together. This is the photo that he secretly kept at home. And it was sandwiched behind the photo of me and him, placed in our bedroom. I took out my phone again and scrolled out the messages that Caleb had just sent me constantly. This is the message he just sent me. Then I put the ring on the table. Auntie, even the wedding ring for me has the birthday of another girl engraved on it.
I'm sorry.
I really can't pretend that I don't know anything and marry him as if nothing had happened. I lower my head and couldn't stop crying. Auntie looked at the messages in which Caleb was threatening me in disbelief, and Caleb was still sending messages continuously. Auntie couldn't bear it anymore. She pressed the record button and said, "Caleb, come home immediately. If you dare to go to Yuki's parents, let's see if your father will break your legs." After saying that, Auntie tremblingly handed the phone back to me. I raised my head and found that Auntie was also in tears.
I'm sorry, Yuki.
Auntie doesn't have the face to persuade you to marry into our family anymore. It's my fault that I didn't teach my son well and wasted 7 whole years of a good girl like you. I shook my head and tightly held Auntie's hand back. Auntie, I'm also sorry to you. I really wanted to be part of your family, but... Auntie patted the back of my hand and looked at the bank card placed on the table. I'll take back the betrothal gift, Yuki. Even without the marriage contract, remember to keep in touch with Auntie often. I thought that Auntie would persuade me to forgive Caleb, but I didn't expect that she would agree to my breaking off the engagement so easily. It seemed that she saw my surprise. Auntie smiled helplessly. I don't know why. I liked you very much when I first saw you. You have a kind face, are polite, filial, and sincere. When your mother was sick, Caleb called you, and you told him not to tell me, afraid that I would give your family money. At that time, I thought that you were really simple-hearted. Although our family isn't wealthy, we still have some money. Obviously, asking your boyfriend for help was the most direct way, but you insisted on bearing it by yourself. I remembered when my mother was sick back then. I was as stubborn as you. As a result, I had a very hard time during that period. And my mother suffered even more. If Caleb's father hadn't known about it and lent a helping hand, I don't know if my mother could have lived a few more years. Auntie wiped away her tears, and her eyes looking at me were full of pity. My son betrayed and wasted 7 years of a girl's life. How can I have the face to persuade you to marry into our family? You've already written me an IOU for your mother's medical expenses. Return it to me when your family situation gets better. By the way, the reason for canceling the marriage contract lies with our Caleb's family. I'll transfer the money for the engagement banquet back to you in a while. Just deduct it from that boy Caleb's own savings. Also, Annie knows that she doesn't have the face to ask you for anything else, but for Caleb's workplace, I hope you can be lenient. Caleb had no talent for business, so his parents asked him to take the civil service exam so that he could have a stable job. I nodded. Okay, Auntie. After leaving Caleb's house, I reported to Vivian that I was safe and then went back home. Mom was cooking in the kitchen and Dad was helping her. When they saw me come back, they just smiled and said to me, "There's soup in the pot. Have some first." I stood at the kitchen door, tugging at the hem of my clothes, like a child who had made a mistake. I had thought that getting engaged to Caleb would put my parents' minds at ease, but unexpectedly, it made them even more worried. Mom, Dad, I broke off the engagement with Caleb today and returned the betrothal gifts. The sounds of Mom stir-frying and Dad cutting vegetables paused for a moment, but only for a short while, and then they got busy again. Okay, take the bowls out. It's time to eat. After that, my parents never asked me the reason for breaking off the engagement with Caleb, and I was relieved. Otherwise, with Dad's temper, he would surely have gone to Caleb's place to beat him up. It was only a long time later that I learned that Caleb had received a voice message from his mother that day. When he rushed home and found that I had already left, he was beaten up by his father. He was so furious that he called my parents, said a lot of offensive and even threatening words like he would tie me up and take me home. Mom said that Dad thought I was in danger at that time and had already gone out with a knife in his hand. In the end, when he saw me taking a taxi back home, he hurriedly ran back home and pretended to be cutting vegetables. It was only because I was safe and out of respect for Caleb's mother that he forced himself to pretend that nothing had happened. After breaking off the engagement, I had a peaceful period of time. Caleb's colleagues and superiors at work all knew about that matter and gave him a warning. Although they kept him, he was still in low spirits and often came to wait for me downstairs at my company. He had confessed, apologized, and even knelt down in public to beg me. He admitted that he had been with me in the beginning because I looked like Vivian. But after all these years, I really haven't looked for her shadow in you anymore. When I met her again later, it was just because of a regret and unwillingness from my youth. But now you are the only one in my heart. Caleb took out a ring. The style was different from the previous one. Whether you want to believe it or not, December 24th is really the date I used to commemorate the decision to marry you. If you don't like it, I've customized a new one with your initials and birthday on it. Yuki, could you please give me another chance? Will you marry me? Half a year had passed. In the half year after breaking off the engagement, Caleb often hung around near my company. Whenever he caught me, he would beg me to get back together and propose to me. Looking at him like this, I suddenly felt a bit dazed. Was I also this annoying when I begged him to marry me back then? Before, it was me who was eager to get married, but now it was him who was pestering to get married. But Caleb, whenever I think about spending the rest of my life with you just making do, I feel so disgusted. Hearing me say this, his hand that was holding my wrist finally loosened a little and dropped dejectedly to his side. At this time, a man in a suit walked up to me and shielded me behind him. If I see you harassing Yuki again, I'll let her use the legal weapon to protect herself. After saying that, he took my hand and left in front of Caleb. Oh, by the way, this man's name is William. He's Vivian's older brother and also a lawyer. Even after experiencing a 7-year-long and failed relationship, I still think that I'm a lucky person. I'm lucky that I knew the truth before getting married, discovered Caleb's true face, and didn't really step into the marriage hall with him. I'm lucky that although I fell out with Caleb, I didn't turn against his mother. Instead, we became good friends across the age gap. Although every time we met privately, Auntie couldn't help sighing while looking at me. I'm also lucky that because of this matter, I got to know Vivian and Ethan and William.
The end.